This episode of Lunduk Show is brought to you by System 76, dedicated to making the best machines for developers and engineers and all manner of humanity. And of course they run Linux. Of course they do. That's just how they roll. You can find out more over at system76.com and Pogo Linux. Pogo's trusted advisors have been delivering open source technologies to the IT community since 1999. That's like a millennia in technology years. Find out more at pogolinux.com. And viewers like you. Okay, today is a little bit of a weird show. I want to talk about the W3C, which I did for 2 episodes last week as well. But what I wanted to talk about today is the future, being proactive and going forward and where we go from here. And over the last week especially, I've had conversations with people who, for the most part, have wanted to remain anonymous. People within the W3C, mostly within member organizations that are members of the W3C, talking about their concerns and where they would like to see things going. There have been a huge amount of public backlash against the W3C lately, and for good reason. I think people are concerned about the idea of DRM within the open and free web. I mean, that's a concerning thing. I think people are concerned about the way the W3C is run or not run, or why are votes kept secret? Why are things not made public when they should be made public, etc. There's been a lot of concerns, and so we've heard a lot of people yelling. And I understand why they're yelling about the W3C and how they want to fork the W3C, create a new organization that promotes web standards and get the W3C uninvolved with all of it. And here's what's interesting. All the people I've talked to so far that have direct dealings with the W3C, whether it's, through a member organization or otherwise, don't seem to want that. Even though they agree that, the W3C clearly has structural, organizational, and process problems that result in the fiasco that we've seen with the encrypted media extensions and DRM becoming a standard. But even with all those problems, people aren't prepared to throw the W3C away completely. Okay, so I dug into this a little bit because honestly, I don't know what I want to see happen. I truly don't. When I look at the W3C, I see a lot of good done and a lot of bad done. And I see a lot of good intentions and I see a lot of process problems and the like that we've seen recently. So what should happen? I don't really know. But in digging through this, someone that I was talking to over the last week brought up a very interesting point that I had not fully fundamentally realized. And that is the W3C itself doesn't really exist. And I want to be clear about this. If I'm wrong on any of the details that I'm about to walk you guys through, people at the W3C, I know you're watching me like a hawk. Tell me when I get things wrong, but don't just email me and tell me I got something wrong. Present actual documentation that shows I'm wrong and shows me what the right answer is. I'm not interested in he said, she said, and hearsay and all that sort of thing and just opinions. I want to know facts. And so if I'm getting some of these facts wrong, please correct me and I will quickly correct the record. I will add notes to the video. I will record new videos, whatever it takes, because I want to get stuff right here. Okay. So let me go ahead and bring something up here. So this is the W3C's webpage. If you go check it out, there's a lot of information on this website. There just is a ton of information. But what's really interesting is if you scroll to the bottom of the W3C's website, you find this. Copyright 2017 W3C. And in parentheses, it has 3 organizations, MIT, ERCIM, CAIO, and Beihong. I'm probably mispronouncing 3 out of 4 of those. So that kind of is curious to me, right? Well, let's dig into this a little bit further. Let's learn about the W3C. So let's go here and let's look at the organizational structure of the W3C. First off, you'll note that The W3C does not have a typical organizational structure, nor is it incorporated. There are at least two ways to think about how the W3C is organized. One, in administrative terms, and in process terms. In administrative terms, W3C is administered via a joint agreement among these host institutions: MIT, ERCIM, Keio University, and Beihang University. The W3C staff, many of whom work physically at one of these institutions, is led by a director and CEO. A small management team is responsible for resource allocation and strategic planning on behalf of the staff. Regional offices play an important role in the W3C being an international organization. Okay, so let's really look at what this is. The W3C is, just to be clear about this, I'll make sure this is crystal clear. They are not a nonprofit. They are not a LLC. They are not a corporation. They are not incorporated. They are not, as far as I can tell, a legal entity. They don't have a thing, for lack of a better word. They don't have something you can point to and say, this is the organization, right? So on top of the organization here, let's dive into this a little bit further. At the very top is this guy. The director of the W3C is Tim Berners-Lee. So I was digging into this a little bit. Why is Tim Berners-Lee the director of the W3C, an organization that does not exist? Well, it appears that he is simply stated to be such. There doesn't appear, near as I can tell, a process in place whereby a director is appointed. There also doesn't appear to be a process in place by which a director is unappointed, right? So if the whole of the public has lost faith that Tim Berners-Lee can be an effective director of the W3C, does that mean anything? It doesn't seem to. I can't seem to find any specific processes that would say get him into office or get him out of office. And whether or not he's in office, does that even matter? Because the W3C isn't an organization any more so than, think about this. The W3C doesn't exist legally, right? So it's not a corporation, it's not a nonprofit, etc. It's not a 503c FBIT whatever, right? It's not anything like that. In that way, the W3C isn't really any different than a couple of 7 to 8 year old girls creating a No Boys Allowed club. Realistically, my daughter is 6, and if she were to get together with her friends and put a sign up on their front door, on her bedroom door that says "No Boys Allowed," that has about as much legal anything as the W3C. You notice even the registered trademarks of the W3C, according to the website, are actually assigned to these universities, and specifically MIT. Okay, so MIT, that's where Tim Berners-Lee is at. In fact, that's not just where Tim Berners-Lee is at. That's where Dr. Jeffrey Jaffe, the W3E CEO, is at as well. They are both at MIT. They're not at W3C, they're at MIT. I mean, their postal address is MIT. MIT, it's all MIT. And then over in the EU, it is the ERCIM, which is the European Research Consortium for Informatics and Mathematics, which is like a organization that coordinates other research organizations within Europe. That sort of thing. And then there's Keio University over in Japan, and more recently, Beihang University in China. So those are the 4 universities that make up the W3C. They seem to be the W3C as far as anyone is really concerned, because the W3C, again, doesn't exist. So it's a No Boys Allowed club. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with creating a club that doesn't really have a charity purpose or anything like that. I could create a club. I love clubs. I could create a pizza club. Go out to grab a pizza buffet with a couple of my buddies, and we could have a pizza club. It's fine. You can have a club. But with something as big as this, when there's no clear way to change the structure of the club, when the entire world is relying on that club that has no legal entity, that has no structure for and no process in place for changing up the top level structure, for getting rid of the director, the CEO, etc., and replacing them all, then that brings up a whole extra host of problems. Is how do you regulate that sort of a scenario? If you have a corporation and that corporation has shareholders, as stakeholders in some way, whether it's private or public, there's investors, there's, shareholders, etc. There's a board of directors. There's usually a process in place by which you can remove a CEO. You can have a vote of no confidence and move forward. And it seems as though you could do something like that with the W3C, but there's no real obvious, clear way about how that would work, which brings up a whole lot of questions about how do you fix the clear issues that exist within the W3C when there's no way to do that. Do you see what I'm saying? It brings up concerns. It brings up legitimate concerns. But what's really startling to me is that this brings up more questions. For example, becoming a member of the W3C costs money, right? So if you want to become a member of the W3C, let's say you're a company and you want to have the ability to have some sway about the future of web standards, you pay a huge amount of money, absolutely astronomically large. I mean, just gigantically large. I mean, the amount of money you pay, I'll bring that up here real quick, in order to become part of the W3C is just absolutely insane. I'm going to bring up the member dues list here. If you go here and you select here, I'm just going to show you guys what it is here. Let's select a country. Let's just select United States. Where is that United States at? And you go United States. I want to show the fees for this country. Show me the fees. So a for-profit organization, there's an annual gross revenue as measured by the most recent audit statement, blah, 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 of a whole bunch of money. You pay $77,000. If you're a smaller company, you pay between, $34,000 and $68,000. There are hundreds upon hundreds of organizations that are part of the W3C. The amount of money they're taking in is staggering. It is huge for this sort of organization. So I look at that and I think, okay, if the W3C is not a nonprofit, if it is not a for-profit, if it's not a company or anything, where does that money go? That question I think needs to be answered, because there's 4 organizations, 4 universities. My understanding from some off-the-record conversations I've had with individuals is that those funds probably go towards the universities, perhaps in that region that people at the member companies are from. Maybe their funds go to that organization. Like if they're in the United States, perhaps the funds go to MIT. Perhaps it's distributed. There seemed to be some uncertainty between people that I spoke to around this. So I need to sit down with the W3C and get some answers. But I'm already not getting a lot of the answers I need from the W3C anyway. So I don't know if I'm going to get any more. But this seems sketchy to me. This seems incredibly sketchy. There's funds going towards a non-existent entity that looks to be no more legal than a No Boys Allowed club. And 4 organizations, 3 of them are universities, in various regions, are administering it. And the W3C, I can't quite tell if there are any actual people that work at the W3C. I don't know how they would, because it doesn't seem to exist. They all seem to be employees or obtaining grants or something from the individual universities that they work for, and then they're working with the W3C. They're part of that club. Maybe that's their job. Let's say if they're the CEO and they're payroll at MIT or something like that, which it seems to be, then their job is to do the work, W3C work, the No Boys Allowed work, while they're working at that university. It's very, very strange. So if we do want to change the W3C. And we do want to make it better. That calls into question how we accomplish that. How do you accomplish that when there is no legal entity? I'm not 100% sure on this. What I would like to put out to the whole universe is, and this includes people at the W3C, the member organizations, and just people in the public, is how do we accomplish this goal? How do we improve the W3C if we are to keep it around, to make it so that it is not just more open and transparent, which it has not been. No matter what the W3C keeps telling me, it hasn't been open and transparent. Votes are closed and locked away. Comments are closed and locked away. Half the time I can't even get a direct answer on how the process works. This is pretty closed and locked away in a deep, dark room that's filled with smoke or something. Like it doesn't feel good that way. But if we want to improve it, how do we do that? If we wanted to say, get rid of Tim Berners-Lee, the knight who created the World Wide Web, how do we do that? And I'm not saying we need to do that, but we need to know that it is possible. We need to know that you can take down the leadership of an organization if there's no confidence that they can lead it properly, or that they're currently not leading it properly. And I would say that there's very good reason to believe that both the CEO and the director of the W3C are not leading the organization well. No, I say that as someone who's not a member. I'm not a member at all. I don't pay the dues, even if I wanted to. I can't afford the dues. I can't. They could give me a free membership into it, and I could have a little more insight. But even then, I don't know that they would. I mean, why would they? Right? I don't know what to do about this. I truly don't. However, it is friggin' fascinating that the W3C doesn't exist. So I wanted to put this out there to people. I felt like this was something we all needed to know about in our conversations, because we can't simply say create a competing organization, because the W3C already has momentum. And what are they competing against? The W3C doesn't even exist. So they're competing against MIT, ERCIM, Keio, and Beihang universities. Why would... it is absolutely mind-blowing to me that that is the case. It is not a simple standards body. It is a club put together by universities that I don't think people realize this is the case. So anyway, I wanted to put that out there. That's literally all I wanted to put out there right now, because I feel like if we're going to have this conversation, we have to clear a lot of things up. Where does this money go? How do we depose of the leadership of the W3C when the W3C has no entity? How do we do any of this? How? It is absolutely confusing as all get out, and that's all there is to that. It broke my brain when someone told me that the W3C doesn't have a legal entity. I was like, seriously, that can't possibly be true. And then I looked at the website, and oh, look at that, it's true. And my brain was just on the floor.